Falling in love and being destroyed by love, these are two very different things, but most people don't recognize the difference when they're deeply in love, especially men. When a man emotionally invests himself in someone, his feelings, sacrifices, and love reach such a height that he begins to lose his identity within the relationship. Eventually, he starts to believe that this relationship defines him, that without it, he is nothing. But the painful truth is, when that relationship breaks, he can no longer find himself. He had become so fused with the woman he loved that her absence shatters his sense of self completely. So, the question arises, if a man knows everything about his ex, that she neglected him, betrayed him, secretly loved someone else, used the relationship for her own benefit, treated his emotions like toys, why does he still want to go back to her? Before answering that, we need to understand that men are emotionally built differently. No matter how tough or robotic they act on the outside, many of them are incredibly sensitive on the inside. When a man truly loves someone, she becomes his shelter, his self-worth, the only reason he feels emotionally grounded. When a woman leaves him, he doesn't just lose a relationship. He loses his imagined future, his life plans, his daily habits, and even his sense of identity. Her absence feels like someone just turned off the lights in his world. And standing in that darkness, he starts to think, what if everything went back to how it was? What if we could start over? That one word, what if, slowly drags him into an illusion. He knows he's been burned in this dream before, yet he still reaches out to that same fire again. This is the most dangerous point, because this is where the man fails to realize he's diminishing himself. He begins to think, if I just accept everything, forgive all her mistakes, maybe she'll come back. From this thought, he starts giving up his self-respect. He starts blaming himself. Maybe it was my fault. If I had been a little more patient, this wouldn't have happened. But the reality is, while he knew how to love deeply, his ex knew how to use love as a weapon of control. Trapped in this cycle of guilt, he can no longer see that a relationship that once destroyed him will never be the one to rebuild him. These men aren't fools. They're just caught in an emotional trap. They loved so deeply that they're now willing to sacrifice their self-worth in the name of love. They believe that love means tolerating everything, accepting every wrong. They don't realize that love is not supposed to destroy you. If love becomes a one-sided sacrifice, it's no longer love. It's emotional self-destruction. Here's another thing to consider. Sometimes the ex-girlfriend intentionally sends out subtle signals through songs, cryptic captions, old photos on Instagram stories that make the guy think, she still thinks about me. But often these signs are just her way of feeding her ego. Some women don't want their exes to completely move on because then they lose that sense of emotional control. She might already have someone new in her life, but deep down she still tries to make sure her ex never heals properly, never finds peace without her. And in this twisted game, the man suffers the most. The one who still thinks, if she just came back once, I'd forgive everything. This forgiving nature eventually turns into his curse, because he keeps placing himself in a position where he loses every single time. He knows she doesn't truly love him, yet he clings to the false belief that maybe some part of that old love still exists. He pours all his time, attention, and emotions into reviving a dead relationship, only to slowly destroy himself from within. There's also a deep fear within these men, a fear of falling in love again and being betrayed, a fear of being alone, a fear of never being understood again. And from this fear, they start clinging to familiar pain, because it's what they know. When they don't have the courage to begin again with someone new, they make peace with old suffering. They think, At least the old pain is familiar. What if the new one is even worse? Behind this fear lies a lack of confidence, a lack of self-love. But the truth is, a man's greatest strength is knowing his own worth. The moment he realizes that nothing is more important than his peace of mind, that's the moment he begins to free himself. If someone still wants to go back to their ex despite knowing everything, they need to ask themselves, will I find peace by going back, or will I burn again in the same fire? If the answer is, I'll suffer again, then no emotion can justify walking that path again. No matter how many mistakes, how much pain, or how much humiliation he's gone through because of her, somewhere deep inside, there's still a faint hope that maybe, just maybe, everything will be okay one day. But the truth is, as time moves on, the scent of that old relationship never really comes back. And that refusal to accept reality, that tiny shred of hope, that tendency to live in a world of what-ifs, becomes the biggest enemy of this guy's life. Because he's no longer walking with reality, he's walking with a shadow that once was love, but now is just a blur. That shadow keeps whispering to him, try one more time, maybe this time things will change. But he forgets that people don't really change, and a relationship that was already built to fall apart can't be held together by emotions alone. And the scariest part? This guy slowly starts to detach from his own life. He begins closing doors to his future with his own hands, just to stand endlessly in front of one door that's never going to open again. He doesn't realize how this waiting is silently eating away at his mental health. His smile fades, sleep disappears, and even the things he once loved no longer excite him. Eventually, he becomes a stranger to himself, and then a question starts to haunt his mind. Why am I so weak that I want back the very person who hurt me the most? And that's where he begins a brutal war with himself. This war reaches a place where he starts believing, the more I hurt, the more it proves how much I love. That's where he makes the mistake of measuring love through pain. He thinks the one who sacrifices more is the one who loves more. But the truth is, real love doesn't look like one person suffering while the other completely ignores that suffering. That's not love. It's one-sided emotional self-destruction. So, is this guy just stupid? No, he's not. He's just someone who doesn't want to give up. He doesn't want his love to lose. He tells himself that if he lets go, it's all over. What he doesn't understand is, it's already over. He's just fighting alone in a battlefield that's long been deserted. He wants to go back to that place where he once felt happy, where things used to feel right. But he doesn't realize that place doesn't exist anymore. It's broken. It's gone. And that girl, she's not the same person anymore either. Time passes, years even, but he remains stuck. He can't move forward with life, can't start anything new. Everyone around him changes, but he stays exactly where he once fell apart. This emotional paralysis starts poisoning him. He begins blaming himself for everything. He thinks, maybe I wasn't the right person. If I were better, she wouldn't have left. But he forgets. No relationship can stand on one person's shoulders. If she truly loved him, no situation, no mistake, no flaw would have turned her that cold. The worst part? These guys often lose their self-respect. They crave to go back to someone who once belittled them, ignored them, or used their emotions for her own gain. And this desire to go back isn't about love anymore. It's about sacrificing the most valuable thing they have, their self-worth. Because if a man doesn't have the strength to respect himself, he will never be worthy of anyone else's love. Love only becomes strong when both people give each other equal respect. These guys don't know how to overcome this inner weakness. They don't understand that when a relationship breaks, it's not a reflection of their worth. It's just two different paths emerging. If they could accept this simple truth, they wouldn't be in so much pain. But they refuse to believe that love can end. They think letting go means they never loved enough. But in reality, letting go isn't the end of love for the other person. It's the beginning of love for oneself. Until they come to this realization, they keep making the same mistakes, sending texts, making calls, silently checking her social media, hoping maybe one day she'll come back. But that hope breaks them a little more every day. Eventually they grow tired, and all they can think is, "I tried everything, but nothing worked." That's when they either fall into deep depression or completely lose themselves in darkness. But here's the truth. If someone truly wants peace in life, they have to free themselves from the broken pieces of a broken relationship. They have to understand that getting her back isn't nearly as important as getting themselves back. And the moment they learn to fully accept themselves, their mistakes, their pain, their vulnerability, that's when a new light begins to shine within them. That light shows them love doesn't always mean going back. Sometimes love means starting over. Going back to an ex means inviting the same old pain all over again. But loving yourself means closing that door forever and walking forward for the sake of your own peace. The men who are truly strong, they don't run away from pain, but they never trap themselves in the maze of old wounds either. They learn that love isn't always about holding on. Sometimes the deepest form of love is in letting go. And that realization, that's what transforms a boy into a man. And from that moment on, he never asks again, "Why do I still want her back?" Instead, he begins to ask, "Why did I ignore my own peace for so long?" And that's where his new life begins,